Tonight, amid the president's growing clash with Europe over the war with Iran, the Pentagon is set to pull thousands of U.S. troops out of Germany. A spokesperson announced the withdrawal of approximately 5,000 troops from Germany. This decision follows a thorough review of the department's force posture in Europe. It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. There was no thorough review of America's force posture in Europe. This troop withdrawal was the result of two things: Donald Trump's tantrum over Germany, refusing to bail him out as his war of choice against Iran spirals out of control, and Vladimir Putin calling in a favor. Just before this decision was announced by the president, with no warning, no preparation by the Department of Defense, Trump and Vladimir Putin had an off-the-books, unsupervised phone call that lasted 90 minutes. We don't know what transpired on that call, but we can guess. Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton told me yesterday that even Republicans in Congress are raising the alarm about this dangerous concession to Russia. And today I've got on the show a former Republican Congressman, Adam Kinzinger, who echoes that concern. We cover a lot of ground, including the release of Adam's new book. Check out the link below. Here's our conversation. Adam, thanks so much for joining us. We've got a ton to cover today. It's probably going to take more than one episode, but let's start with this. What feels like an emotional outburst from the president demanding the removal of 5,000 U.S. troops from Germany on the heels of an off-the-books 90-minute phone call with Vladimir Putin with, as far as we know, no NSC members present. It was just him and Vladimir Putin, and the result, apparently, is this withdrawal from Germany. Break it down for us. Yeah, I mean, look, clearly an emotional outburst. Clearly not done. I mean, he really doesn't have a National Security Council anyway. People forget that it's Marco Rubio, and that's about it. And, yeah, I mean, he, for whatever reason, has this 90-minute call with Putin, probably. They talked about all their favorite movies and stuff because, Trump really wants to be his buddy. And then, gets off the phone and he's mad at Germany because Germany didn't participate even though they've been helpful on basing and everything. They didn't participate in Iran, the war that he didn't even not sell it to the European allies. He didn't even sell it to the American people, by the way. He made no effort to do that. And so he just pulls a number out of thin air. 5,000 troops. We're going to pull them out. This is a gift to Putin at a time, by the way, Ken, and you know this as well as anybody when Vladimir Putin is putting extra security around himself because he fears a coup. Ukraine, even though both sides have been, boxers in the 9th round, but Ukraine has been crushing Russia, and, Donald Trump goes and gives him a big bear hug. So we know what this is. And this, I think, we need to not tiptoe around it. Not that you do, and not that I do, but we need to, as a country, quit tiptoeing around. This guy has something going on with Vladimir Putin. Whether it's something Putin has on him, whether it's a natural affection for the fascist that Putin is, I don't know. But there is something unhealthy, unbelievable. And I got to say this, too. Every damn Republican that's still in the House that'll tweet their concern, "Oh, I'm concerned about this. Oh, right. Like, great. But just 2 of you can shut down the floor of the House of Representatives for the rest of the Congress until you get your way." So, if just 2 of these people would say, "You know what? I'm going to vote against every rule that comes to the floor. Rules govern floor debate. Until a Ukraine bill comes to the floor, or something like that." They can do it. I don't. It does not take courage to put out a statement on X. It takes courage to actually take the power you have and do something with it. Great point. Can you explain to the uninitiated what America's footprint in Germany actually provides? It's not about the security of Germany, at least not primarily. It's about the security of the United States. It's also about medevac. The U.S. military presence in Germany is a linchpin in our global national security posture. Yeah, absolutely. So I remember I flew a couple missions when I actually flew the KC-135. I only did that for a couple years, but a couple missions. Bringing wounded soldiers out of Afghanistan. They always go to Germany. There's, I think, Landstuhl is like the big hospital there. That's right. That's very important. It's a posture so Germany has been essential for our posture in the Middle East, to an extent our posture in Asia, and 100% obviously with our posture in Europe. And if you think about, look, in the olden times when we used to actually believe that a free Europe mattered, Germany having this big footprint was there, so that if the Russians, for instance, did attack Estonia as an example, which is not an unrealistic thing, we could forward deploy those troops if we needed to quickly while we actually reinforce from the States. So that forward deployed footprint is important for us to be able to execute whatever mission we need to on a timely basis. Do you remember all the talk about Benghazi back in the day? And some of the criticism was legitimate. Most of it was overblown. But one of the things that I remember my Republican colleagues saying is, why didn't we get troops there faster? And I agree. Why didn't we? Well, having troops forward deployed is how you do that. If you bring all the boys home and you just put them in, Fort Sill, and then you're sitting around wondering why we can't respond to things like Benghazi, well then, you're not thinking foreign policy through. So, this is an essential footprint, and, we just have a baby as commander-in-chief right now. That's the problem. And you're right about it being an absolute gift to Putin. There is growing chatter, even in the Russian blogosphere, about Russia's deteriorating military situation, about Ukraine's ability now to execute deep strikes into Russia, and there is real concern that Putin, as a distraction, or who knows what his rationale might be. But there are serious people saying he might try to open a second front, and the Eastern Europeans, the Estonians, for example, certainly take this very seriously. Is it something we should really be worried about? Yeah, we should be. And I could see. So, obviously Vladimir Putin has perfected what we call the gray area attacks, right? So, this is the little green men that go in. They can't fully be, pinned to Russia. Everybody knows it's them, but they're not in under the Russian flag. So, that's a gray area attack. Or he could just do a full attack. And it's a real concern. It's a real possibility, especially if you think Vladimir Putin is desperately trying to convince the Russian people that he's losing in Ukraine because of NATO, not because of the ineptness of the Russian military or the goodness of the Ukrainian military. And so, what better way than to provoke an attack with NATO? And so, it's a very real possibility. And look, Vladimir Putin has he doesn't treasure his people, right? He's willing to throw men into a meat grinder to buy time. And so he's definitely would be willing to do that in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, something like that. So it's a very real possibility. Are who best to know than those that are on the front lines in Eastern Europe? And they seem very concerned, and they understand the Russians far better than we do. And lastly on that, look, Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin knows that he's got a limited time with Trump as president, and that's his time to act, indeed. And to your point about those who share a border with Russia knowing best, all you need to do is go visit that border to understand the threat that Russia poses. It looks like something out of a World War I movie. But worse, with the, not just the trenches and the barbed wire and the dragon's teeth, but fully mobilized defensive positions, the counter-drone units now ramping up. And one other thing, Ukrainians everywhere, helping them out. Ukraine is going to emerge from this war as a superpower. I just wish we had the wisdom and the humility to take their advice. I don't know if there's a question there, but if you want to comment, go for it. Well, yeah, I mean, look, if we had a smart president, we would be taking this opportunity to learn everything we can from the Ukrainians. One of the things we always know is when we go to war, one of the advantages is having old NCOs or old officers that have war experience. That can make a difference on the opening day. The same with Ukraine. They know counter-drone technology. They know offensive drone technology far better than we do, and that the DD, I think underneath it, all still has a decent relationship, but the president is doing everything he can to destroy that. Hey everyone, it's Ken. Super quick break to remind you that I've got a Substack page. Please consider subscribing for exclusive content and bi-weekly Substack lives. And for the next month, every paid subscription goes towards my upcoming reporting trip to Ukraine. Thanks for the support. The link is below. Slava Ukraine, one of the AOs where we have not internalized the lessons that the Ukrainians have paid for in blood, is obviously Fifth Fleet and the drone attacks that are still raining down on freighter and tanker ships in the area, and certainly American bases and Allied bases. What's your assessment on approaching day 70 of the war with Iran and where things stand? Yeah, I mean, this president clearly has put us in the worst possible scenario of all kinds of bad, and maybe a couple good scenarios. We're in the worst, right? What the president should have done is made the case to the American people. Clearly should have made the case and brought an alliance with him. I think he could have brought a few allies if he actually attempted to in this war. And then, you double down on that, and then you make it clear. Here are the objectives. Those objectives shift every day depending on who you're talking to. Here are the objectives, and we are willing to do whatever we need to do to achieve those. And look, I don't think we should put ground troops in Iran, but if you're going to war with clear objectives and it takes ground troops, you need to be willing to do it. If you're not, the one thing you never say to the Iranians is, we're not going to put in ground troops, because you've just given them the roadmap for what they need to do to outlast you. They have the ability to accept a lot of pain. And so if you're like, we're going to do everything except anything on the ground, they know, well, we can sustain an air attack. And so what the president has done is provoke the war. Obviously, the strait is shut down. We don't even begin to grasp the real oil shocks that's coming. I mean, even if the strait would reopen tonight, tankers move at the speed of a bicycle. So imagine now bicycling, because in the past, there's always like a long train of tankers to each port. So imagine now riding a bicycle from the Strait of Hormuz to whatever port of entry, and that's how long it is until you even get the first drop of oil from a reopened strait. I don't think people have grasped that. So we're in the worst position. And I think the president, quite honestly, needs to either admit defeat, which I don't want, because, long after Trump is gone, we have to live with the consequences. Or he has to do what he needs to do to reopen this or engage. But we're in a really bad situation, my friend. One of the other things this administration has really failed to appreciate, I think at the top of the list, is the strategic vulnerability of the Strait of Hormuz. Maybe a close second to the difficulty of securing the nuclear stockpile, the enriched uranium that the Iranians have, but they also fail to understand the enemy in fundamental ways, especially the ability of the IRGC to take punishment, to withstand economic pain. I mean, this is an organization that grew out of the revolution that was at the front in the war with Iraq, which was a punishing, brutal war that pales in comparison to what they're being asked to endure right now. Can you talk about what it means for the IRGC to now be in charge? For Iran to have become a fully militarized state? As bad as the clerics were, the IRGC is worse. Yeah, this gets back to the we're in the worst case possible scenario, and that is it. The IRGC, they're hardliners. They exist. It's like that old theory, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. The IRGC is built to be a hammer, so everything looks like a nail to them. This is the worst case scenario. And here's the crazy thing. The dime model, right? Diplomatic, information, military, economic. Those are the 4 tools you have to use to win a foreign policy battle. The military tool we do well. And I would even argue that the military did what it was asked to do in Iran. The problem is, you're supposed to couple that with economic pressure. Only recently did we even embargo Iranian oil. In fact, we lifted sanctions on it at the beginning of the war. Diplomacy. Who the hell knows what's going on? And information. So the Iranian regime, the IRGC, who has no cultural coolness, right? These are people that, they're not hanging out in bars or whatever. They are kicking our ass on the PR front by Lego means. They're using Lego videos. And what is the White House doing? Is it taking the very smart people that work for it and trying to create counter-propaganda, so to speak, to this? No. The White House is spending their effort putting out stuff going after Democrats and other Americans. And then they wonder why 20% of the country is all that supports this war. They have failed on every level, the diplomatic, the information, and the economic front of how to do this. And then they wonder why they're not losing. This is what happens when you put a bunch of really stupid people who have been convinced that the main enemy of America is Democrats and some Republicans. When you've convinced these people, and that's where their efforts are spent, you find yourself in this situation. And sadly, we will wake up to this, but it's going to be at a great cost. They are both stupid, and I would argue deeply insecure. Watching Hegseth go after the media, kicking them out of the Pentagon, calling people like me who dare criticize him Pharisees, which has a 2,000-year history of being used as an anti-Semitic slur. I mean, when I see him doing the Special Forces cosplay thing, and then I think about the soft guys I know who are laughing behind his back, I think his insecurity is well-deserved. But we don't need it being acted out using our military. And I will say, because you still have contacts, you've probably seen it too. People would ask me all the time, is the military turning against Trump? And I'm like, well, the military kind of reflects the American people. Tends to be a little more Republican, particularly now in the enlisted corps. That used to be the case in the officer corps. But this is the first time I have seen my friends in the military that I still have left that have openly, not openly, but have turned against Hegseth. They think he's a clown. They think he's a cosplay actor. He's a performance artist. And the weirdest thing is, Hegseth is probably a pretty good actor. I just don't know why he's chosen to act like this and not like a competent Secretary of Defense. It's unbelievable. Yeah. We haven't even talked about the hearings last week. We'll maybe cover that ground another time because I have to ask you about your book, which is just out. Yeah. Can't wait to buy a couple copies. Tell us about it. Oh, and you're going to flash it. Yes, that's what heroes do. It's called That's What Heroes Do. Look at this, man. It's got some amazing illustrations in it. You know, people talk about heroes a lot, right? And I think there are some people that are absolute heroes. You know, folks serve in the military, people that put their lives on the line. But, you know, kids right now think of heroes. They think of Superman, Spider-Man. The reality is kids every day can be heroes. And this book isn't political. But what it does do is it maps out, you know, Christian and his dad. My son's named Christian. You can see who the story is based on. But they go on a little journey around the country to see people that are heroes. And they might surprise you. You know, one quick story. I had a friend who's a black entrepreneur that started an organization called Tuskegee Next. And what they do is they take young, predominantly African-American kids out of the rough parts of Chicago and teach them to fly airplanes. And so far, 60 kids, it's amazing. 60 kids have gone on to fly for airlines like United Airlines. And these are kids that never would have thought being a pilot was something they could do. That guy is a hero to me, right? And even as little as somebody that's willing to help an old lady cross the street. And so it's a message for people in the kind of 4 to 12-year-old range about, you know, how you can live every day as a hero. And I would just ask people to go get it because it's you'll love it. And obviously, you know, it's pre-sale still today. It comes out tomorrow. But it's a fantastic book. Awesome. We'll put the link in the show notes below. Adam, thanks as always for joining us. It was great. Thank you. Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at midassplus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipke, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at midassplus.com.